Hello and welcome back, everybody, to a brand new Stardate, brand new episode of the Space Show. Thank you so much, everyone, for being so patient while we had some interruptions on the ship, the great ship, the Space Show. I and Carrie were sick a couple of weeks ago. I physically lost my voice, as it tends to happen. Every time I get sick with a sore throat, my voice just quits.
Yep. My entire time off that I was supposed to have to enjoy for the holidays, I was sick and couldn't speak. And miserable.
But at least you were able to, at least you got sick after you went to Disneyland.
That's true.
Um,
But
well,
people who were messaging me about, hey, where's the Space Show? And my reply was a cryptic, how will you miss us if we won't go away?
I did.
Remember that.
I did post on Patreon because if you are part of the Geek Show Patreon, geekshowgotthiscovered.com, you do get an early drop of the Space Show. And I did post there that, due to an illness, the crew could not perform that week. And everybody, thank you so much for your kind well wishes. But everybody else who is not part of that, you were just left in the dark. And I am sorry about that. It's been this first week of the new Stardate year has just been so crazy. But I personally haven't watched any Star Trek this year. Today is the 9th that we're recording this, and I haven't physically watched. I know, and I've also only watched 2 movies, which, if you know me, that's
very little for Rebecca.
Insanely behind on everything. But welcome back. I am your host, Rebecca Frost, joined by Admiral Kerry Jackson and Commander Robert Neal. And today we're talking about these Season 1 Next Generation episodes, Haven, The Big Goodbye, Datalore, Angel 1, and 11001001, which I don't know how you guys are pronouncing that. That's how I'm pronouncing it.
It's probably the right way to pronounce it.
This batch of episodes has some of my favorites, and so let's start. Okay. This when I watched this when I was watching the season for the first time almost 2 years ago now. The Haven and Angel 1. I cannot wait to talk about them. So let's just jump right into it. Haven. While on a mission to a planet called Haven, Counselor Troi meets her husband-to-be, a marriage arranged by her father years before, as the Enterprise encounters a ship far deadlier than any combat could provide. This one sees the grand return of our friend Majel Barrett, who would go on to be, an even more Star Trek, but we're traveling to Haven for some shore leave, and the thing about this planet is it has mystical healing powers. And while we're on our way, Counselor Troi is made aware of, hey, this wedding that I had arranged for you, that her father had arranged for her years before, we're moving forward with this wedding, so you got to be ready. And this is new
now, my dear.
And this is news to our boy Riker. And when I tell you, he is devastated.
Well, I mean, let's start off with the fact that we first see Riker in his quarters having personal harp time. You're just kind of like, what are you doing?
Watching
just like
watching these two.
I'm the one who breaks up with people, not you.
What is this ache in my chest? I have never felt this before.
When I do that to them, is this what happens? Oh.
So Troy's parents and her intended husband's parents, Wyatt Miller, they aboard the ship, and Wyatt aboards the ship as well. And then Loxana Troi also appears, the fabulous return of Majel Barrett. Can you imagine watching this live? And she is described as a larger-than-life personality who dominates any room just by her presence.
You're right, Robert. She is the ultimate space diva. Totally.
She makes Picard carry her luggage.
Oh, that was a great scene, by the way. I love that scene where he's...
So, really quick. So, Mr. Hom, Loxana's valet, was Carl Stryker, who also played Lurch in the Addams Family movies.
And the giant in Twin Peaks.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not the same guy who appeared in that one episode of original series that we determined?
No,
Okay.
that's a different actor. That was I can't remember his name now. But he was the original Lurch in the
Ted
Addams
Cassidy.
Family TV series. Ted Cassidy, thank you. He was in Star Trek, and this Lurch is from the movies Addams Family. Oh my goodness, Star Trek and the Addams Family. Look at that.
It's easy to do when there's such little television in the past.
In the past, yeah.
Deanna is sad because this means that she has to leave her position in Starfleet. Wyatt is a medical officer, and Luoxana says that the Millers, Wyatt's family, tracked her down in Haven and forced her to honor their vows taken several decades ago. Deanna's sad about it, but she promises to honor the customs and traditions of her civilization, which, by the way, a Betazoid wedding requires full nudity. Why?
Because Betazoids.
Because
they're apparently well, okay. I read a Peter David novel called Imzadi, written by Peter David, great comic book writer, also a great Star Trek writer, and he explains that the Beta Zeds are a very sexual race. So,
which we get from seeing Luoxana over the years, and from the 3 Betazoids on Lower Decks.
Yes.
Yes. Both Troy and Deanna and Wyatt, they do not really get a lot of time to know each other because this was arranged when they were children and they have not really gotten to know each other. But Wyatt does seem disappointed because he has been having visions and dreams of this woman that he thought would be Deanna, and it is not Deanna. Rob, you seem to have thoughts on this.
I do, because so he pulls out these pictures that he's drawn over the years of this mystery woman, and the first thing for me to start in my head was, "Hello, is it me you're looking for?" Because it was totally,
See,
totally.
I went music video, but a different genre. This is a typical 80s heavy metal chick, in a music video.
Her hair was huge. Huge blonde hair.
Yeah.
So he's also bummed about this situation because she's not this blonde white snake chick. Yeah. But
that's what he wanted.
It's okay. The Millers are, of course, a human family, so they want just a normal wedding with clothes. But Luoxana is like, absolutely not. We are having a Betazoid wedding. Where everyone must be naked. But they ultimately agree to a half and half, because later on I'll get to the scene in a minute. Deanna and Wyatt are talking, and she says, well, this is the deal with Betazoid's wedding, and so they agree to do half and half. Which half would be naked?
They're gonna Donald Duck it. They'll wear shirts.
And they're gonna Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, no pants. So.
But this whole time, there's always a B plot, right? And our B plot is a Tyrellian vessel has suddenly appeared, destined for Haven. The Tyrellians are supposedly have been extinct, and so their presence is a surprise. They had a war on their planet, which led to the use of biological weapons, and the entire planet was infected. Many Tyrellians escaped, but perished on other worlds. They are rats. They are plague rats, and
they're headed to Haven because they heard the legends of the healing
of the mystical healing properties. So Wyatt offers to work with Dr. Crusher to find a cure for the Tyrellian plague. And meanwhile, Haven has asked for protection from the Tyrellians because they don't want this plague.
And they're like, shoot them down, Jean-Luc, shoot them down.
Yeah, like, blow them out of the sky, and it's like, you were supposed to be such a peaceful planet. What happened?
Yeah.
Exactly.
But in the meantime, my favorite emo son, William Riker. If you are watching along at home, I pulled up a picture of my sweet emo Prince William Riker on a rock in the holodeck, looking just the saddest he's ever looked.
Why didn't he go full goth video and do a church in the rain or something like that?
He's picked a lovely this is to me a beautiful scene. Just a pink and purple sunset in the desert. He's got his pining rock that he's cast himself upon. And Deanna, of course, has to come in and comfort him because that is the role of any woman in any male-female relationship.
Right.
But she's a counselor. That's her job.
She
And
is.
he's a suffering
are correct.
Starfleet officer, and she's the counselor.
You are correct. And this
I'm
is
sorry, I
this
tried to
is
sell
when it's okay. This is also when Wyatt also comes to the holodeck, which, by the way, rude.
I know. These people are just walking in. Isn't there a lock on
Not
there?
first.
I want to be
I
alone.
imagine Riker's got one of those hand drawn. No girls allowed.
Especially
Well, I mean, the
Deanna.
safety protocols weren't active, so I mean, it's like, oh, sure, just walk on in.
Yeah.
And this is where Riker leaves Diana, because Diana, you know, she does her best to comfort him. They both acknowledge, hey, we're both upset about this, but it is what it is. And then Wyatt comes in, and this is where they have their conversation about one, hey, I used to have a thing with that emo kid that just left, and two, we're gonna have to be naked during this wedding.
Surprise.
Hilarious. Back in the B plot, you know, Haven wants Picard to destroy the Turellian ship, but Picard's like, hold on, I got a prime directive I gotta uphold here. And they try to make contact with the Turellians, and it's been unsuccessful. They hold the Turellian ship in a tractor beam and disables their ability to transport anything, just in case. They finally establish visual contact with the Turellian ship, and the White Snake lady is there. And Wyatt goes, hey, wait a minute. I've seen you from my pictures.
I drew you a picture.
You were in my dreams.
And then she's like, you were in mine too.
And ultimately, Wyatt decides to join his dream woman on the Turellian ship, and he takes over some medical supplies with him. He takes over some ibuprofen. Turns out that fixes it. And they no longer have to go to Haven, and everyone lives happily ever after because Deanna doesn't have to get married, and he got his White Snake woman, and
Riker got
And
Deanna
Steve.
back, and yeah.
and Bob's your uncle.
But we didn't get a wedding. Darn it.
But this episode also, Deanne, they have a dinner, and Lwaxana is stirring that pot. The Real Housewives of the Enterprise, am I right?
Oh, she's totally the Real Housewives of Beta Set.
And
The whole who are you? I'm just like, the only thing missing was like a snap in the neck twist. I'm just like, that's the only thing
I'm
missing.
The Lord of the House of Beta Set, the rings of whatever, and the whole proclamation that she makes. Yeah.
And Deanna gets so fed up. She storms out and knocks over the gong that they keep ringing every 10 seconds. And
because whenever I love that bit, whenever she takes a bite to eat, Lurch has to hit the gong.
Bong. And it was a nice emotional outburst from Deanna, because up until this point, we have only seen calm, cool, collected Deanna, but
yes,
seeing dramatic
That
Deanna was an icon. And Data would love the Real Housewives, because as soon as she leaves, he says, "Can we continue the petty bickering? I find it most intriguing." And that's when Data has started to become one of my favorites. Some bits of trivia from this. Gene Roddenberry told his wife Majel Barrett that her character Lwaxana Troi was written as the anti-Mame of the galaxy. A second and uncredited Star Trek appearance of Armin Shimmerman, who would later go on to be Quark. He shows up as the talking gift box from the Betazoids.
Oh yeah.
Okay, can we talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
Because that was like, it was like Harry Potter in space. It's like that box was like a howler from Harry Potter. And she spared nothing.
And it shows up later in Lower Decks, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And this episode features the only usage of the Enterprise D's dining room. In future seasons, formal events would almost always be held in 10 Forward, which, okie dokie.
10 Forward won't show up until season 2, I think.
Yeah.
Correct.
But you got to get Guinan in there somewhere.
The next episode, The Big Goodbye, Captain Picard and some of his crew were caught in a deadly trap in the holodeck as the result of a ship-wide scan from an alien race. This is the first of 2 holodeck misadventures in this batch of episodes. But also the first real venture into the land of pretend, right? The main plot of this episode is the Enterprise is on its way to a diplomatic mission where Captain Picard has to master an extremely difficult language and deliver a welcome address flawlessly, or else. The Harada are an insect-like race, and they consider the slightest mispronunciation an insult. So he's stressed, he's tired, and so Picard decides to take Counselor Troy's advice and spend some time on the holodeck. And the holodeck has recently been upgraded. We're recently upgrading the holodeck twice in like 2 weeks.
I know, right?
As we'll see later. Anyway, it's this holodeck. But our boy Picard, he chooses his favorite program where he gets to play a private detective named Dixon Hill in 1940s San Francisco. And he rolls up in his costume, and he is also accompanied by the ship's historian, Waylon.
That's when you knew there was going to be trouble.
When you take someone who's not another main character.
The unknown character. Oh, he's a ship's historian. You're like, okay, problem. I can see it, on the way.
Wee-oo.
Why does the ship need a historian if you've got the biggest mobile computer in space? Why do we need a historian?
Hey.
Now you're gonna
Someone's got to input the stuff into the computer.
Now you're gonna blow. Now you're gonna blow space seed out of the water. Come on now.
The Harada rendezvous is still like 11 hours away, and so Picard hopes to wrap up his adventure in the holodeck well before then. Within this Picard's detective story, he's retained by a wealthy lady, Mrs. Arthur Bradley, to figure out who is trying to kill her. She suspects a Cyrus Redblock, and Picard charges $20 a day as his retainer, plus expenses.
Lunch.
In the holodeck. But turns out she dies. He learns about it in the newspaper, and Picard is arrested because he was one of the last women she saw. While all this is happening, the Enterprise is scanned by the Harada, a long-range scan, and it causes a malfunction that traps Picard as well as Dr. Crusher and Data in the holodeck, and our ship's historian Waylon. Picard is being interrogated by a police officer, and it's all very lifelike. And not only that, but the safety mechanisms of the holodeck seem to be disabled because there is a shootout, and Waylon gets shot with a real bullet and bleeds real blood, and everyone is like, oh no, we are actually in danger. And also, the holodeck is not letting them leave. They keep trying to end the simulation, and they are just stuck.
But there's one thing though, because Picard went in the first time and is experiencing the holodeck, and he goes back in, and when he does, he invites Dr. Crusher on awkward movie date, and that's when Waylon and Data come in.
Yeah, that's true. Oh yeah,
and there's definitely a moment in this episode where Picard turns to Beverly and is like, "Do you want to go see my fun detective office?" And she goes, "Yes." And you can just tell they were buying a two-way ticket to Pound Town when Waylon and Data are like, "Hey, we also want to see The Office," and they can't say no.
Locks on the door. Let's get
No, but Waylon and Data asked, and you can't just say no when somebody else wants to see your office.
I'm the goddamn captain. I can say no.
Out on the Enterprise, Wesley is our child prodigy, fixes it. Blah, 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 blah. I was so bored by this episode.
I was as well.
I liked seeing Data in his fun outfit,
From South America.
I liked seeing everybody in their fun pretend outfits, but I was surprisingly bored by this episode.
I mean, this was to set up the whole idea of the holodeck, where it could do more than just be the place where Frakes goes to whine,
or where Wesley falls into the river.
Or that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's they I guess they needed to set up the possibilities of the holodeck, but it's kind of all in all not great.
Yeah,
episode.
our child prodigy Wesley fixes it. Picard delivers his speech to the Harada flawlessly. typical classic
Yeah.
TNG episode. This is the only episode of any Star Trek series to win a Peabody Award. If you're like me and didn't quite know what a Peabody Award was, a Peabody Award is named for American businessman and philanthropist George Peabody, honored what are described as the most powerful, enlightening, and invigorating stories in television, radio, and online media. Interesting. Maurice Hurley, the producer of the show, described this episode as being like a breath of fresh air. He explained it was just fun to do. It's got humor and life to it. The thing is that Star Trek can't brood. If it broods, it gets self-important and self-indulgent and preachy, like it has a tendency to do if it's not careful. But it has some life to it, some humor, and then it just jumps up and flies. It's different, but absolutely locked in the Star Trek format. Everything in there worked. And I agree. Absolutely agree. This is a solid Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just spoiled with my 2023, 2024 eyes. And
Could be. I going back and watching it, I'm as I'm watching it, I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I can see why you needed to do this episode. I understand. You're bringing the people along. This is a new thing. We didn't have the holodecks on the original series. Let's teach them what this is. Let's teach them that there are consequences. Why you'd build a thing that could kill you, I don't know. Maybe not have safety protocols with the ability to be turned off in there.
Well, but this also gave us the first big existential crisis episode for TNG with at the very end when Red Block and his goon walk out of the holodeck and start to fade, and the detective sees them fade and is like, "So what happens when you walk out of here? Do I die?" And
yeah.
and he's like, "I don't know." Computer, lights off.
Stop thinking about it. Please stop acknowledging your existence. And then also, budget restrictions prevented the Harada from appearing on screen. Tracy Torme, the writer, was disappointed because he had developed a hive mind culture for the aliens. The script describes them as wasp-like, black and yellow, with pointed insectoid features and waving black antennae. So yeah, I can see why the budget couldn't afford that.
Yeah, well, we got a couple of expensive episodes ahead of us, so yeah, you can't have your bugs this time, but
no bugs. You can't be a Doctor Who episode. Moving on to an episode that Rob was pretty bored by, Datalore. The Enterprise visits the planet where Data was created. You said you fell asleep.
I was tired.
The Enterprise visits the planet where Data was created and discovers another android like him, but when he's assembled, he's not exactly like him.
Now, see, I skipped this episode on the original run.
What?
And yeah, so the whole Data origin thing was kind of new to me. I didn't realize that was his origin story, that he was just found, so
Little orphan Data.
Yeah, Little Orphan Data. That was new to me. So that was interesting. And I thought, who would leave this perfectly good android just lying out here outside? I don't understand.
Well, as the Enterprise is on its way to visit Data's planet Omicron Theta to see if they can learn more about his somewhat unknown beginnings, the entire population of the planet died of unknown reasons many years previously, and Data was found right around that time. The entire planet is now dead with no vegetation or insects or even soil bacteria. And although they find no one alive, they do find a huge underground complex and surprisingly a disassembled version of Data. They also find a lab belonging to Dr. Noonien Soong, the Earth's foremost robotic scientist, who was known to have been working on the creation of the positronic brain. But he was known to have failed in his quest. And inside the labs, they also find many drawings by kids that show a glowing object in the sky and frightening all the inhabitants of the planet below. So, of course, like you do when you see a puzzle, you put it together, and we've got a second Data.
But he's got.
And it was funny because it's like the $6 million Man remake, 23rd century style. Just like, well, we put this here and here. I'm just like, where's Rudy Wells when you need him?
Exactly. Thank you. I got that reference. Thank you, Robert.
And also, Data tells Beverly a secret. He has an off switch. Don't tell anybody. Okay, he's trusting Dr. Beverly
Well,
Crusher
it's
with this
your
secret knowledge.
doctor, confidentiality. Yeah.
Mhm. The reassembled version introduces himself as Lore, and he is an earlier and also superior version of Data. He claims that he was disassembled because he was so human-like that he frightened the local population.
Well, in that you're a dick, in that most humans are, and that most humans are dicks. Is that it? That you were too human-like?
Hey, we don't like him. He's mean.
Hey, he's showing us the bad side of us. Let's get rid of him.
So the local population asked Dr. Soong to create a less perfect android. So we have an uncanny valley Data now. Lore also claims that the positronic brains inside Data and him are from Dr. Nunez Soong, and hence he was right after all. Lore also demonstrates how Data has limitations that were purposefully built in by Dr. Soong to make him less human. Like he can't tell jokes, he can't figure out humor, he doesn't use contractions. Lore tells Picard of a crystalline entity that feeds on the life force of all living beings, and this was the entity that struck Omicron Theta and killed everyone on the planet. But Lore also knows more than he lets on, and he has the ability to call upon the crystalline entity of great destructive power, the very power that destroyed the planet. And that is why he was disassembled in the first place. Lore, like humans, is ambitious, and he wanted to cozy up to the evil thing, and he wants to bring it onto the Enterprise.
Lore is an asshole from day one. Is the thing you need to point that out.
Yeah.
The second he's turned on, he is an
Smarmy.
asshole.
He is smarmy.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and should not have been trusted. But of course, our naive next gen cast were like, "Oh, everyone
Not
has
true.
to be
Because
given a chance."
Tasha was like, well, look, there's
Tasha
like two of them
knows.
now.
Of course,
She's like,
Tasha knows.
acting security chief and not his girlfriend. How much can you trust Data now?
Yes.
But also, so Lore roofies Data first of all and switches clothes with him and starts to impersonate Data. And Wesley finds them, and Lore tells Wesley as Data that Lore, air quotes, attacked him. And he then also sends a message to the crystalline entity from the Enterprise and writing it to the Enterprise.
Delicious humans here for you to eat. Come
I
and
think
get
you might
some.
like it.
I'm a jerk robot.
And there's that scene where Lore is talking to Data, like right before he roofies him, and I don't think Data can necessarily feel heartbreak, but when Lore was telling jokes and explaining to Data that he has humor and knows how desperately Data wants to understand humor, I do feel like you can see Data's android heartbreak, because that's all he wants to be human, but not a dick about it, you know?
He was a real boy. Yeah.
So they're back on the ship, and Wesley has his suspicions. And Wesley is very, very forthright in saying, hey, I don't think we should trust Data. And this is where we get that fun gif of Picard saying, shut up, Wesley.
Yes.
And having watched this episode a second time, because Wesley, he doesn't back down. He
No.
says like at least 3 times, we cannot trust him, and even stands up in defiance of Captain Picard and says, we cannot trust him. And watching this a second time with brand new Starfleet Star Trek eyes, right? I was so proud of Wesley for doing this. This took Starfleet guts to do, and
did.
I was so proud of him.
And here's what I'm determining, because I'm a few episodes ahead of this batch here. I'm looking back on my Wesley dislike and re-examining it now. Everybody is being such a dick to him.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause he's a kid.
Everyone from Picard, Riker on down, even his mother at points, were not treating Wesley really well. I mean, certainly not the respect that he should get. I mean, how many points do you have to score before they treat you like a person?
Exactly.
Well, we not only get the first shut up Wesley here, but the second one comes from his mom.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like,
And when that happened, I was like, how dare you, Beverly Crusher, say that to your son, who you should believe? Like, it was just, I remember the first time I watched this, I was like, shut up, Wesley, get bent. But now watching it, knowing what it takes to be in Starfleet and just the cojones that you have to have, I cannot exaggerate enough just how much pride I was filled
And
with.
again, doing the rewatch, Wesley is much more qualified to be on that bridge than a lot of people on that bridge.
Well, and another thing, didn't Beverly, like two or three episodes before this, defend him? Like, if an adult had said this, you'd be fine with it. And Picard was
Exactly.
kind of like, let's not talk about that.
Yeah, it was.
And then suddenly it shut up Wesley. It's like the first season. There's no continuity here. There's somebody needs to be in charge of that.
Well, and especially when it comes to Dr. Crusher too. But we will talk more about
We'll get to that, yes.
further on. Long story short, it's all fixed.
Data's defeated, or Laura's defeated.
Laura's defeated. Data is returned.
Wesley gets his job back.
The entity moves away. I do love which one do I shoot? That's one of my favorite tropes, and we got that in this episode. And Bob's your uncle. Tomato, tomato.
Yeah.
But moving on to another one of my favorite episodes of this. Oh, just kidding. Before we move on, some bits of trivia from Datalore. According to Will Wheaton, the stand-in actor used in this episode really irritated Brent Spiner and was never used again. He described the stand-in as looking like a breakdancer doing the robot whenever he had to portray Data or Lore, and said that, I think the guy was really into playing an android and his enthusiasm got cranked up to 11, but by the end of the week, pretty much everyone wanted to deactivate him and sell him to the nearest Jawa.
Ooh.
Wow.
Because the guy was told you're playing an android, and so that was where he went. Instead of saying, "How do you play this android?"
Exactly. Data's creator's name is Noonien Soong, similar to the name Khan Noonien Singh.
And let me just say this. I have had a problem with this character's name from the beginning. It's too goddamn close to Khan Noonien Singh.
Gene Roddenberry.
They should have picked a different name.
Gene Roddenberry used these names in hopes of contacting a World War II buddy with a similar name with whom he had lost contact, which we had talked about previously when we talked about Khan.
Yeah, but I don't care. You're just confusing us. Use the phone in the phone book. I mean, if you're looking for your buddy, it's just too close. I've had so many people who are just casual Star Trek fans have come up to me and said, now wait, did Khan invent Data? And I'm like, no.
Yes, you should be like, yes, he did.
Yes.
And just move on. All those years on Steady Alpha 5 had to do something.
Yep, we made a robot. Yeah.
This was also the final episode of Star Trek written by Gene Roddenberry before his death on October 24th, 1991.
There you go.
Which, if that's one of Gene Roddenberry's final episodes, I think it's great.
Okay.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Way to go, great perv of the galaxy.
Moving on to Angel 1. Riker, Troy, Data, and Yar beam down to a planet ruled by a matriarchal government in the hopes of locating a missing freighter crew. And let me tell you, when I first started watching this episode, so however many years ago, I tweeted, okay, I live tweet the episodes. And so I was like, okay, it's time for Angel 1. And everyone was like, yes, strap in Rebecca. And I cannot believe I am so predictable. But we'll get to that. The Enterprise visits the planet Angel 1 in hopes of rescuing the survivors of a Federation cargo vessel, Odin, that had crashed there. The vessel itself was floating in space but had 3 life pods missing. The crash took place several years before, and it's taken many years for any Federation ship to receive the distress call, and so they're not sure what to expect. They do know that Angel 1 is a matriarchal society with technology the same as mid-20th century Earth. Here, women are stronger, and the men adopt a more subservient role. Beata, is that how her name is pronounced? Beata? I cannot remember. She's elected That's her title 1 of the planet. And she allows the Enterprise team to make a brief visit to search for the missing Federation crew. Deanna takes the lead in communicating with the female-dominated society, which makes sense.
Okay.
They confirm there are 4 male survivors. Their leader's name is Ramsey, and they are hiding on the planet. 7 years ago, when they landed there, he accepted the hospitality, but later grew restive and even questioned the natural order, as human males are wont to do.
Of course.
No shade to you guys. Beata asks the Enterprise to look for these fugitives and remove them from the planet as soon as possible. But when they find them, the survivors don't want to leave, which is a problem for everyone involved, because Beata is saying, hey, we are going to kill these men if they are not taken off this planet, but they don't want to leave.
We're going to catch them and put them to death. You better get rid of them.
But they have integrated into the planet. They have wives. They have children now. And they claim that Beata is afraid of them since she believes they will start a patriarchal society on Angel 1 and wants them gone. Did you guys see the movie Barbie? Moving on.
Yeah.
We all know what happens if you bring patriarchy to Barbie land.
That's right.
Data tells Yar and Deanna that since Odin was not a starship, its crew is not bound by the Prime Directive, and thus they cannot force Ramsey and his men to leave if they want to stay. It turns out Beata's second-in-command, Ariel, is actually in love with Ramsey and reveals herself when the Enterprise trio leave. As for Riker, he also has to tread carefully with the planet's leader, Beata, and she takes an interest in him because, of course, how could you not? She invites Riker for some drinks and wants to have sex with him, and eventually Riker gives in, air quotes, gives in, like he put up much of a fight.
It's diplomacy. And remember, it was only 3 episodes ago he was mourning losing Deanna. All right.
This is my rebound.
Again, continuity. You need somebody with the show Bible there watching things happen.
But one of the fun things to note here is when he goes to have that private dinner with her, his outfit, he wears the traditional Angel One outfit. And
Don't
Troy's
worry,
just kind of like,
I've got you.
there you go.
There it is.
And Troy's just kind of like, but you're going to wear that in front of her? But we can be a thing again.
What's so funny about this outfit is he goes to change. Deanna comes back into the room and she's like, Natasha, you are not going to believe what you are about to see with your own 2 eyes.
They're both laughing. They're both laughing. I love it.
He's just got one nipple out and the smuggiest grin anyone's ever seen.
Now here's the sad thing about this outfit. Okay, well, I mean there are many things. But,
what do you mean the sad
back
thing?
when Next Generation was just coming out in syndication on the networks, the Playmates Toys had the license for Star Trek: The Next Generation action figures, and they
Is this an
would
action figure, and do you have it?
They would give a toy to a character. Remember the Traveler with the 3 fingers?
Yeah.
He got an action figure. You know, a bunch of characters that were on the episodes once got an action figure. Sadly, Rebecca, we never got an Angel One Riker, as much as we all want. We never got
Guess I'll have to take matters into my own hands.
Hey, listen, if you customize action figures, if you could make an Angel One Riker custom figure, please let us know.
Please send it my way. And this is the moment everybody on Twitter who was following along with my live tweet was waiting for. And boy, did they deliver. I still haven't recovered. Dios mío. Oh, back in the B plot, though, aboard the Enterprise, a severe flu epidemic has struck, and Picard is infected, so Geordi is acting captain. And I gotta tell you, Geordi's sitting in the captain's chair and saying, make it so. The way I fist pumped, I was so hyped. Like, I need more of this. I need more Geordi in the captain's chair. Beverly, she's working her butt off trying to figure this thing out. This virus mutates every 20 minutes, 0 fatalities though. She figures out that the virus travels by imitating the scent of a perfume that initiates deep inhalation by another person. So there's a moment where Picard is with Worf, and Picard is like, "What is that smell?" And Worf is like, "Oh, that's a Klingon delicacy. Isn't it amazing?" And Picard, "No." So just so mean. The Enterprise also receives reports of a Federation outpost near the neutral zone tracking 7 Romulan battleships, and they need backup. Riker wants to beam to the Enterprise and defend the outpost, but Deanna doesn't want to surrender the Formorn to Beata, and also Beverly's like, "You cannot come up here. We've got COVID up here. You cannot come up here." Beata figures out that Ariel is supporting one of the human Ramsey. Riker speaks to Beata again and offers to take the 4 Odin crew and all of their associates, including Ariel. But now Beverly, she doesn't want anyone to come aboard just yet. They send Data up because Data can't catch it, and orders the Enterprise to the outpost to defend against the Romulans. Data reckons that there's still time, and they have 48 minutes to fix things on the planet and the ship. So, Beverly, you better figure it out. Riker argues to Beata that Ramsey did not start the revolution. He merely became a symbol of the changes in Angel Society, which were already well underway. Beata finds truth in this and releases the captives. Beverly finds the antidotes. Yada yada yada. The big message of this one is you can't stop a revolution, lady. And
a male
she
revolution lady.
Yeah.
But we also, this is the first time we get so Data can't catch this virus. He can catch the one from the Naked Dal, and he can get drunk or he can get roofied. But hey, we get this virus. Send Data, no problem.
Exactly. Again, consistency.
Continuity.
A showrunner. Continuity. We need to have these rules.
So, and one other thing, a trivia thing. So, a trivia thing that Rebecca may not have gotten, but I'm not sure.
Well, let's see.
So, her Ariel, Beata's aide, was played by Patricia McPherson, who previous to this was best known as Bonnie Barstow, Kit's mechanic on Knight Rider.
I did not have that bit of trivia pulled
I'm like
up.
racking my brain going, I've seen her. Okay, thank you.
Here to help.
The bits of trivia I do have for Angel 1. This episode marks the first mention of the Romulans in The Next Generation. Some of the production crew subsequently thought poorly of this episode. Executive producer Maurice Hurley described it as terrible, just terrible, one of the ones you'd just as soon erase. And producer Herbert Wright felt that the sexual places it was dragged to was absurd. And then this piece, that made me real mad. Patrick Stewart had previously given the writers and producers his disagreements with elements of other episodes, leading Gates McFadden to think she was welcome to do the same. When she complained that the episode struck her as sexist, the writers waited until the end of the season, when Gene Roddenberry left the show and appointed a new showrunner, to declare that they would also quit the show unless McFadden was fired. As a result, she was written off the show for the second season.
Yeah, that's another story.
Yeah, just so cool. I also started reading the book Lessons in Chemistry, Carrie, that the show is based off of. Yeah. And boy, there's a lot of sexism just in my life that I'm experiencing just by proxy.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to the next episode, 11001001. The Enterprise docks at a starbase for repairs where it is commandeered by a race of technologically linked aliens intent on using the vessel for their own purposes. So the Enterprise is docked at a starbase for what is supposed to be a computer upgrade. The Enterprise is 1 week late than scheduled due to another task it had to perform on the way. The upgrade is in the hands of the Binars, an advanced race whose minds work in binary code. And the Binars, I really wish we'd see them again, because their whole deal is actually pretty cool. Mm-hmm. About how they evolved with technology ingrained into them. 10 and 01 are one of the pairs that are in charge of the refit. Picard says that the Binars became very connected to the main computer on their planet and gradually evolved into binary beings themselves with the binary language. Riker has a strange feeling about them and asks Wesley to keep an eye on them.
So now we'll listen to you if you find something strange.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Now, yeah.
But Riker, he doesn't know what to do with himself when they're on some downtime, so he decides to spend some time on the holodeck in a New Orleans jazz bar.
I like how specific he got building that world.
So
Yeah.
specific, because the
That-
holodeck had also recently been upgraded by the Binars, and they said, hey, try it out. Get specific. And he was like, okay, and listed off just the most detailed scenario possible.
Yeah. I love that. No, it's too crowded in here. You're really, let's see, make it this time of day. It was perfect the way he did that.
And even in crafting the woman that he wants to meet there, no, make her sluttier, and she just changes to brown hair.
Immediately.
Yes, that's the one. And so he meets the beautiful Minuet, and Riker
Is smitten.
just getting horny for anything, you know.
And he even asks her, "How real are you? As real as real as you need me to be, buddy."
Like what? Like if I
wanna,
could you?
And
And eventually later Picard joins them too, and
and they're sitting and talking about her like she's not even there. This is amazing, isn't it? Wow, look at that.
We saw you from across the bar and liked your vibe. We also learned.
And she's all about keeping Picard in there. That was
Oh
interesting.
yeah.
I thought that was interesting. At first, I didn't understand why, because I was just like, is she trying to cock block Riker? Is that what's going on here?
But we also learn that Riker can play the trombone, baby, and he gets right up on that stage, and it's La La Land 2017 all over again, or 2016 all over again. Meanwhile, back on the Enterprise outside the holodeck, the warp containment field begins to fail, and whoop whoop, red alert. Data orders an evacuation of the ship because when the containment field fails, the antimatter connects with matter and then explodes. So
they were like, the ship's going to blow up. We got to get everybody off and get out of here.
So everybody gets off the ship, and Data sends the ship off into the far reaches of space, not realizing that Riker and the captain are still on the ship. The computer confirmed to Data that Riker and Picard were not on the ship, but then it leaves. Everybody's like, where's Riker and Picard? Oh my God, they must still be on the ship. Oh, and the Binars too. The Binars are still on the ship. Riker and Picard soon kind of piece together that Minuet does not want them to leave the holodeck, and they get a situation update from the computer, and they are wandering around the ghost town of the Enterprise. And it appears that the Binars have stolen the Enterprise, but they arm themselves, set the ship to auto-destruct. They have 5 minutes. They notice an enormous amount of data being received and stored on the Enterprise's computer banks. They access the bridge and find 4 Binars lying unconscious and dying. Picard and Riker cancel the auto-destruct as they reach the Binars planet. They find that the main computer on the Binars planet is off, and a star in their system is about to go nova. The EMP from that would have shut down their computer and erased all data, so they plan to shift all data into the only mobile computer large enough, the Enterprise. But the nova went off earlier than expected, and the Enterprise was 1 week late, so they transfer the data to the star base, and they didn't know, and she doesn't know why the Binars are dying. Blah, blah, blah. Picard figures out the passcode to the combination of the combination of the Binars names 11001001. They transfer the information, and the main system reboots. The Binars recover. They held Riker on the holodeck since they knew that they might die and needed someone to restore the computers, and they didn't ask for help as though they thought they were at risk of rejection and the stakes were too high. So the moral of this episode is don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
So there's a couple of things about this episode. especially that wrap up part. They knew that they needed Riker, great, but it took Picard on another console, so they never considered the fact that we need two people, not just one, to put in the password at the same time, and that never came up. Just like, yeah, we were going to keep Riker because we figured he'd be okay. You just happened to be here, fortunately, at the same time. Thanks.
That's
But
interesting.
another thing, if you're watching as the episode progresses, the station commander, and I can't remember what his the space starbase commander, I can't remember what his name was, uh, immediately identifies because Riker or Picard made a comment about gendering, and the station commander says they're not gendered. Riker, through the entire episode, keeps saying he to the binars.
He won't give in to the woke agenda. You guys, I cannot believe we haven't even talked about, I should have wrote this up at the top of the episode, the Fox News correspondent who, when they were talking about a story about how Star Wars is too woke because of its feminist propaganda, and that's why she's a Trekkie, and did the Vulcan salute backwards, and also tell me you've never watched Star Trek without telling me you've never watched Star Trek.
It was woke since '66.
It
Sorry.
is always been woke, and this is just another great example of the woke propaganda of non-gendered peoples, right?
Yes.
Anyway,
and there are more to come on this show. She clearly has not.
More to come.
She has not watched Star Trek, or the Star Trek that she's watched is all Captain Kirk centric, and she thinks it's all, the boys'
It's all
club.
him.
Yeah.
So another thing with Minuet, when she first appeared on screen and turns her head, when he finally gets the Minuet that we know and love, when she turns her head, it surprised me how much she looked like Kate Mulgrew, a younger Kate Mulgrew.
She did for a second, didn't she? Yeah.
And the piano trio, or the jazz trio, the piano player, for people of a certain age, Schoolhouse Rock, that was Jack Sheldon. He's the guy who played and sang Conjunction Junction and I'm Just a Bill.
Him?
Yes.
That's
that
him.
Was him. Oh, wow.
Yes.
If not for him, I wouldn't have passed school. That's not an exaggeration either, man.
But yeah, I was looking up something. I'm just like, who is this guy? Because like I knew that Jonathan Frakes does not play trombone, or at least did not as of that episode, which you can tell when you watch him playing.
Correction. Don't you worry, Robert. I have an explanation for this. Jonathan Frakes is actually able to play the trombone and has done so since the age of 9. However, the producers wanted a more professional sound, so they hired session musicians to overdub his playing. No effort was made to match the overdub to the visual image, and as a result, it often looks like the actor has no idea what he's doing. And this would be repeated throughout the series.
Why don't you try to match? Why don't you try to match what he's playing? I mean, come on,
And ironically, this episode won an Emmy Award in 1988 in the category of Outstanding Sound Editing for a Series.
So one other thing for Carrie, the Starbase, it was reused from Star Trek 3. It's a starbase that the Enterprise pulls. Same starbase.
I was going to bring that up. I thought that the starbase sequences in this were beautiful. Seeing the Enterprise E, flying up to that familiar looking starbase that we have seen, and then the docking and all of that. All of that starbase stuff I thought was great. That's where apparently we couldn't get the bugs for previous episodes because we had the starbase stuff that we had to do.
Yeah, but they got the
all the costumes. Well, that's this group of episodes. Next episode, we will be talking about Too Short a Season, When the Bow Breaks, Home Soil, Coming of Age, and Heart of Glory. What do we think about this batch of episodes? Best episodes ever. Angel 1, Haven. Solids in my heart, but I know they're not necessarily fantastic for everybody else.
They were okay. I mean, I think that my high water mark is still Code of Honor. So compared to that, I mean, that's a high bar to hit for any episode after that.
We certainly have some better episodes on our way. I'll say that. These are okay. but we do have some better episodes on our way, including the season finale, which is fast approaching. So
Yes. Yep.
yeah, some good episodes coming, and the show does start to find its footing.
Mhm.
Granted, we had to get through an entire first season, but I think once we start the second season, we'll see a show that maybe has got this continuity thing figured out, maybe. And, we won't be making the same mistakes. And there is a show Bible now, and, that whole thing.
Yeah, we have to walk before we can run. And while we're learning to run, we will keep going where no man has gone before, but a lot of men have gone before. And we'll see you next time, everybody. Thanks.